What's up guys, Belamy Prime here, and in today's video I'm going to be going over some of the new patch notes that just got announced in Korea. I know I haven't really done any of this kind of stuff since I returned, and I'm kind of behind. There's been a few things that I've missed, and I'm trying to catch up myself on what's new and what's coming to ArcheAge, or ArcheAge Unchained more specifically. But we just recently got some information that came out of Korea that I think you guys might find interesting. I definitely found it most interesting, and we talked about it a little bit today on the stream, and people were asking for me to upload this later on YouTube so they could, watch over it again and hear me discussing some of the changes that we think are coming. So this is what this video is going to be. I'm just going to this is going to be unedited. I'm just going to go through and I'm just going to look at the D-Pain's lazy ArcheAge translations and basically go through and see all of the changes that are happening or coming in Korea, which will eventually come down the pipeline and meet us on ArcheAge Unchained, or if you still play Legacy, over there as well. Now, we're unsure of exactly how far away this is going to be for us, but there's some interesting changes, ones that are going to definitely change the meta quite dramatically, I think. But nevertheless, we're going to go over them and we're going to read through them. Keep in mind, I've been over these very vaguely on stream earlier today, but we're going to go through and we're going to talk about some of the changes. So, first change that's happening is we're getting a new version of Meina and Glenn and the other chick, what's her name, Jola. So, this is nothing too crazy. We don't know if they're going to give additional loot. They most likely will. They'll probably have some sort of quest relating to them. Unsure of exactly what that is, but we can see here we got the new versions of Meina and Glenn. And basically the way this works is Meina and Glenn and Jola have a chance of respawning as a stronger version of themselves, which is cool. There's nothing too crazy to read into on this. It's just, each of these three bosses, when you kill them, they have a chance to respawn to give, respawn as a better version of themselves. That's presumably much more difficult to kill. Pretty exciting. I don't know if they're going to give like new Meina and Glenn sets. That might be actual relevant pieces that can be used. But that's pretty exciting, especially considering Meina is a melee, so there might be some interesting melee pieces that come out of her new set, if that's a thing. Presumably, if they do any kind of tier 2 Meina and Glenn pieces, that could be interesting, especially with like the precision strike fists and things like that. Maybe a potential upgrade on that could be cool. So different stuff like that could yield some interesting results. I'd like to see some actual interesting armor pieces again, things like the old Hermit's Glare helmet from Leviathan that removed the Sundercast time, stuff like that. It'd be good to kind of see some interesting pieces that you could build around in the game again, but that's just speculation. We have no idea what's going to come out of these. It's just, hey, new Meina and Glenn, new Jola. They'll probably have some new stuff, but we have no idea at this point. So that's that, right? Pretty cool, pretty interesting, nothing too crazy. Now we got a bunch of skill balance changes, so we're going to go over these, and we're just going to give our opinion on each of them. So we have the archery stuff first. Let's see, the changes are roughly what they mentioned archery, how archery would shape into during the LAN Amigo. I don't know what this is, but the intention of archery changes are the following: focusing on channeling the fighting style by making it more movement oriented with some CC skills. So this is good. I agree with what he says here. Basically, they're changing a lot of the stuff that would slow you down and force you to stand still to deal extra damage, and they're turning Archer into more of the old school style run and gun, where it definitely promotes moving more so than standing still or making yourself immobile. So we'll go over these. Concussive Arrow, this includes all skills. It gives 17% increased damage against snare targets. It's not super relevant, but it's additional damage in some cases, so that's cool. Double Recurve is going to make your Concussive Arrow instant cast now, so essentially no longer will you have to backdrop to use instant cast Conk Arrow, which is interesting. And the life version increases your crit rate for 3 seconds by 3%, so that's interesting. I don't think many people really use Double Recurve, but I mean, they'll obviously have to use it now because they won't just be able to backdrop Conk Arrow people to silence them because that's very OP, right? So we got the snipe, we got the combo and hit, stuns flying enemy targets for 5 seconds. So there's a few ways this can apply. If you're doing things like bubble trapping people, fending, arrowing them into the air, and then you can snipe, or you can maybe potentially, if you just bubble trap someone, that would count as them being flying. I'm not sure. There's some interesting combos you can do with this, but unsure of exactly how reliable it will be to actually apply this stun. We got 20% increased damage, 21% increased damage against snared targets. Same deal as the Conk Arrow, pretty cool. Kind of encouraging people to run snare. I know a lot of archers don't. And they changed the lightning version, which I think is the D-pen one that you charge up. And it can be used while casting, so you can basically, end the channel at halfway or 75% or whatever, wherever you find. If you have to end it early, it'll have obviously less damage than it would at 100%. Makes sense, right? But yeah, cool. So Missile Rain, they changed the basic Missile Rain to a 5 skill charge that can be used on a target location. So it's basically, the way that reads to me is essentially a God's Whip version of Missile Rain, which could be potentially really good. Depends on what kind of damage it does and how the interaction works. Like if it has any kind of travel time, it might be shitty. But if it's essentially just a God's Whip for Missile Rain or for archers, that could be really insane. Could be really fucking good. And then the Mist version, which is the one that most people use right now, can be used without targeting an enemy. So instead of tab targeting someone and then having to fire it and then being able to free cast it in whatever direction you want, you can just start casting it whenever and you don't have to actually be targeted on someone. So that's a nice quality of life thing for Missile Rain. Deadeye, name change to Hit and Run, or whatever the translation ends up being when it comes to NA in EU. While moving, the player received a defense pen buff, which is the 3k defense pen that it currently gives. And then when you're stationary for 1 second or more, the buff will be removed. So it's essentially the opposite of what it is right now. Alright, so it gives you 3k def pen right now, but you have to be standing still for 1 second, I think, for it to begin applying. And then you get the range buff. That's obviously moved. So essentially, you pop Deadeye, you're going to get the 3k and whatever else it gives you. And yeah, you have to keep moving to keep that up. So that's cool. And then we got steady shooting. And now this is really, really good in my opinion. When you pop steady shooting, you cannot shoot targets closer than 4 meters. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's not the case right now. So that's new, but that's not really much of a hindrance. If someone's within 4 meters of you, you're probably in a bad situation anyway, and you shouldn't be trying to shoot them. You should be trying to get away as an archer. So yeah, that's not too much of a hindrance. It could mess you up sometimes because you might not be able to fending arrow someone if they're standing on top of you. If that, you'll have to stop your steady shooting and then fending arrow them, for example. But it no longer slows you to walk while the skill is on, but the player still, you can't block, parry, or evade. So essentially, your movement speed is no longer affected, which is really fucking OP. But the trade-off is presumably that you cannot shoot targets within 4 meters. So this is a huge buff because steady shooting is insanely good. And it was worth using when you basically had to walk while using it. And now you don't even have to walk. You're just a little bit vulnerable in these 2 ways. And then other than that, it's just crazy. So that's really, really fucking good. Archery getting a lot of solid buffs. That's pretty exciting. Okay, so possible new combo. This says hit and run, steady shooting, and stealth turn sacks. 30 meter snare, stalker's mark, double recurve, conk arrow, 3 blazing arrows, charge bolt. Yeah, look, I'm pretty sure anyone would be dead if you did all of this setup and just conk arrowed someone, to be honest. I'm pretty sure if you were geared, you used hit and run, steady shooting, stealth to get the 10 stacks, snared someone, stalkers marked them, double recurved, and then conk arrowed with a charged conk arrow, you would one-shot most people if they're in cloth or leather, if you had good gear. Like, that's a lot of setup just for all of this. But anyway, yeah, that's a great combo. I can agree with that. Anyway, so, Sorcery Malediction now. Read what he has to say here. He said, Malediction was always in the discussion of skill balance because it had great damage and was also able to adapt on many sticky situations. True. As developers are aiming to separate Sorcery Malediction, they can't just simply nerf Malediction as well. Makes sense. This patch won't solve all the problems, but XL is trying to form an environment where both skill sets can be used separately by removing the synergy between the 2 skill trees. Well, I'm going to say right now, you can't really remove the synergy between the 2 skill trees. You can make one build better for each skill tree, but there's always going to be synergies because, doesn't matter what they change, the way they've set up Malediction, it's always going to be good with attack speed, and there's a lot of stuff in Sorcery that are good with attack speed still too, so Fanatic is still going to be good despite these changes. But anyway, we're gonna read what these changes are. So, remove the combo effect on Soulbound Edge, increasing its damage with Malicious Binding. That's fine. No one really Malicious Binded and then did Soulbound Edge for the extra damage anyway. Prioritize targets within 20 meters that are hit by crashing waves. So I think the way this means is that if you soulbound edge someone and you're using crashing waves, then your crashing waves will prioritize aiming at that target. So this is a good way. A lot of people who've used crashing waves will know that in a raid, sometimes you might be tab targeted to someone and facing your character at that someone as well. And sometimes your crashing waves will be going on a fucking 45-degree angle in the other direction. It can be very frustrating, especially when it can cause, you know, people to escape or for you to not get a kill because of it. So this is kind of a good way to kind of guarantee that your crashing wave is going where you want it to go in situations. So that's really nice. Not necessary in 1v1, but in group play, this can be very useful, so that's cool. Ring throw, they just reduced the range on this from 10 meters to 5 meters and cannot be used on targets that are behind you. I didn't know you could cast on targets that were behind you. I thought it was always a line of sight thing, but I haven't played Fnatic in a while, so maybe that is the case. Ring toss, really fucking good. I'm kind of glad they're nerfing it because, you know, it's 5 meters, it's still good against melees, but it just means that it's not going to be as overpowered against, like, a mage like myself, right? Because you can't just drop my staff and make me deal no damage and waste all my cooldowns. Okay, now this is where we start to get into the territory of me. I'm a cast time mage, and I'm building completely for cast time. I'm the 1% of people that are doing that, so this is starting to get interesting for me. So they reduced the cast time from the Flame Bolt Flame version, which is the big fireball, the one that I use. The cast time from 1.5 seconds to 1 second. Now, this sounds good for anyone who actually wants to cast it, but it's actually kind of bad because most of the time we're using Backdrop and God's Whip animation cancel to deal damage. So essentially this is just a 33% damage reduction on each of the hits. So yes, you cast it faster, but you deal 33% less damage, which is a big hit, I have to say. So animation cancel with God's Whip is definitely not going to be as good with the Flame Bolt Flame. But it'll still be strong, it'll still be worth using, and the one, you know, the reduced cast time looks good on paper. It's not even really that good, even if you're a cast time build. It's actually more, this is actually better for a non-cast time build than it is for a cast time build, because if I have, you know, 40% cast time, my cast time for a Flame Bolt Flame would be like 0.6, 0.7 seconds on a cast time build, and when they change it to 1 second, it'll just go from 0.6, 0.7 to like 0.4, 0.5. So it's a very minimal change. Yes, I'll be able to throw Flame Bolts fast as fuck as a cast time mage, but you know, it's a nerf essentially. It's just an all-round nerf for pretty much everyone. So that's a bit of a shame, but what can you do? It'll still be good. It'll still be usable. Now this is where we start to get crazy. Now, Arc Lightning, instead of the 70% crit skill damage or critical damage bonus that it gives. So if I tab over in game here and I look at my my Arc Lightning, you can see if I apply increases critical damage plus 70% if used on a target with burning, frozen, and electric shock. Now, it's really easy to apply on a target to get that extra 70%. And right now on my mage, since I only have 206% magic critical damage, and with rhythm stacks I have 236%. This is really good because it basically puts me at 300% cap, and that's nice. And even if I'm at 300% already, it's still a nice amount of damage. However, having 46% increased damage against targets that are affected by burning, freezing, and electric shock is way, way, way better. It's really, 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 really good. So the way this scales is basically on Arc Lightning, it has a ridiculous amount of scaling with magic attack and skill damage. So you can see the base skill damage of my Arc Lightning is 27,013, which is 5,007 base damage plus 1,258% of my magic attack. You can see that right there in a little bit of green text. And this number, both these numbers scale quite dramatically with skill damage. They scale alright with magic attack, but mostly with skill damage. So essentially, the way, although you won't see the physical number increase when you get this extra 46%, but essentially this is 46% skill damage, which is a ridiculous amount of damage. And to put that into perspective, for someone who is familiar with an item such as the Honored Frenzy Node Archie, when I pop this, it gives me 25% skill damage. And that's where the crazy amount of damage comes from when you pop Nodachi. Doesn't matter what class you are, the skill damage, like, obviously some classes, like the attack speed is really good as well. But the skill damage from that buff is what makes Nodachi very, very overpowered for putting out damage. And that gives 25%, and you're looking at almost double that on Arc Lightning for free, basically, as long as you apply these 3 effects, which is very easy to apply. I'm not going to show you how to do that simply in this video, but if you want to come check out my stream sometime, I'll show you like an easy way to apply all 3 of those buffs in like a second in a fight, and then easily Arc Lightning someone for the extra effect. So this buff is incredibly overpowered. This makes no sense to me. Like, one-shotting people with Arc Lightning when this comes out is going to be so fucking easy, it's not even funny. But anyway, we're moving on. So yeah, wait. Before we move on, so someone with me who's going to do a cast time build, or is doing a cast time build, I'm literally a cast time build, this is fucking, like, just glorious, dude. This is going to be insanely overpowered, and I can't wait. Continuing on, Mana Fountain, they remove the attack speed increase, which it gives, if I pop it here, it gives me 100 attack speed. 100 attack speed, 15% cast time reduction for sorcery skills only. The attack speed is global though, so it was really good for attack speed mages, especially ones like fanatics that are using Malediction. That attack speed applied for all your Malediction stuff, which made it very, very good. So they're removing that, so that's good. It's kind of a nerf to Malediction, but a buff to sorcery plays, especially if you want to do a cast time mage build. And instead, it reduces your cast time by 25%, up from the 15. So that 15% reduced cast time on sorcery skills is going to be 25%, so that's even better for cast time mage. So that's really good. And on top of that, when you have Mana Fountain up, when equipped with a 2-hand weapon, it reduces the global cooldown for sorcery skills by 10%. Now this is fucking pretty crazy. I'm not gonna lie, like, the 10% global cooldown reduction is kind of ridiculous, especially for a 2-hand. It's good that it doesn't apply for like anything other than sorcery, because this would be very, very, very good for Malediction mages if it was just while using a 2-hander reduces global cooldown by 10%. That would be way too insane for Crashing Wave, so I'm glad I hope it's only for sorcery, because that's going to be way too busted for Malediction with 2-handed weapons, if that was the case, but it's not. So, cool, we get more global cooldown, which basically means a number of things. If you're a staff user and you're using lightning flame bolts, you'll most likely be able to throw them out at an incredible pace. If you're an attack speed build with a 2-hand weapon, that will be insane. On top of that, the GCD on just being able to backdrop and flame bolt will most likely allow you, with a little bit of attack speed from like Freerunner, will most likely allow you to throw 5 flame bolts in a single backdrop, which is also insane. And on top of that, it's just good for any firebolt when backdropping. And on top of that, it's just good for God's Whip, animation cancelling, anything like that. It's really good with, but mostly Fireball. Fireball is going to be pretty crazy with. So yeah, really crazy buffs to sorcery mages, and a little bit of hate towards Malediction mages. So bit of fun, bit of good. Yeah, this is a great change. I'm enjoying the changes that are happening to mages, because it's benefiting the way that I want to play, which right now is the underutilized way to play. No one plays cast time mage. This will most likely popularize it a little bit, especially with the more people that will see me playing it. It's most likely going to get picked up again, especially when people see me one-shotting people with Arc Lightning again. It's most likely going to get picked up, but as of right now, yeah, Sorcery Mage is looking really, really good, especially cast time, so that's cool. Alright, we're going to look at Battlerage and Swiftblade changes. So these are there's only 2 changes. So, while equipped with a 2-hand weapon, it increases trips to 3.5 seconds from 3 seconds. And while equipped with a 1-hand or dual wield, it reduces them to 2.5 seconds from 3 seconds. So, essentially, if I look at Battlerage here, you can see that every trip you can apply from Battlerage, so the trip from Well and Slash is 3 seconds, the trip from Snare is 3 seconds, the trip from Terrifying Roar is 3 seconds, and the trip from Behind Enemy Lines is 3 seconds. So if you're a 2-hander, it'll be 3.5. If you're a dual wield, it'll be 2.5. So that's kind of good. It's kind of separating that. It looks like they're kind of trying to separate Battlerage melees and Swiftblade melees, whereas Battlerage kind of benefits more using a 2-hander, and Swiftblade is obviously more geared towards dual wield. So that's interesting. I like this. The sad thing about this is if you're a Swiftblade melee, it's kind of a pretty fucking heavy nerf to you, because Swiftblade kind of is shit without Battlerage. You need Battlerage to make Swiftblade good at the moment. It's not a standalone DPS tree yet, so that's kind of shitty, but maybe, you know, there's some incoming things with Swiftblade that are going to help with that. But we got here, the Blink skill includes all the ancestral versions, can use the skill during the GCD while in the effects of Fleeting Footsteps. So Fleeting Footsteps is the one that makes you resistant to slow, or if you use it twice, immune to slow, I think, as far as I know. So that's interesting. You can do some interesting stuff with that. Basically, it'll allow you to, you know, blink onto a target and then return to your locate. Like, it'll allow you to do some crazy stuff off GCD, like really quickly get on top of someone and then really quickly hit them and then return to that location and have that hit still go off. Because you can use this basically off the GCD. So that can be pretty ridiculous. I think that'll be fun to play with, but unsure of how that will behave. So we got a couple extra skills here that don't really affiliate to any main class. So we got Backdrop Wave. That's going to get the remove concussive area instant cast is getting removed. That's cool. I don't know what the new wave backdrop's going to do. It's probably just going to do all of the stuff except for the Conch Arrow. So it'll still be good for, what does that do? What does it give, like Mud Hand? What's that called? Earthen Grip cast time or some shit? Doesn't matter. So yeah. But you can still instant cast your Conch Arrow like we talked about earlier, so that's cool. Innovate, while on effect, target cannot receive buffs from songs. So this is just going to make things like Shadowblade even better than it already was, in my opinion, because you already ran Innovate because it increased trip duration and reduced received healing. So this just makes things like Innovate even better for taking out single targets in raids and groups and things like that, and even better for killing healers. So this is really going to fuck with healers, and it's really going to be good for taking out key targets in raids and groups and things like that, because it's a really major debuff, you know, especially as a melee. So Shadowblade, right? So they're going to be tripped for longer, they're going to take 60% reduced healing, and they're not going to receive any songs. So they're not going to be getting defense songs, they're not going to be getting Ode, they're not going to be getting quick steps, and they're not going to be getting chanties. So that's really good. Critical Discord includes all ancestral skills. While under the effects of Discord, target cannot use shield related effects. So if you use Critical Discord on a target, I don't know what shield-related effects is going to encompass exactly, but presumably this is going to be things like Shield Slam, Bull Rush, Readout. They won't be able to use things like that. So this could be interesting for Blade Dancers and things like that. Melees that struggle with dealing with tanks that use defense. So that's really cool. Kind of a bit of a nerf to defense. And some other specific skills, but yeah, really, really good, especially for Blade Dancers and things like that. Pain Harvest makes you immune to bleeding. Not too many people use Pain Harvest, but it basically is just going to be making you tankier against melees because they can't bleed you to deal additional damage. So this is cool if you're a Doombringer or any kind of healer that uses Pain Harvest in occultism. Interesting. The metal changes. Honestly, I know fuck all about metal. I don't use defense. I don't condone using defense. I think defense is... So, I have no opinions to give about this. I'm sorry if you're a defense user, but I'm the wrong person to look at. Shield Slam Gale, cooldown reduced to 2 seconds from 4 seconds. Remove the effect that cancels target skill cast. I don't even know what Shield Slam Gale does. I think if I look here, where is it? Defense, Shield Slam Gale performs a swift jarring attack with your weapon, dealing X damage, melee damage, dealing additional damage equal to 1% of your max health. Okay, so it's just the short cooldown one that deals damage based on your HP. Grants a caster a stack of shield block. Okay, so the shield block... Okay, so this is the one you spam, and you don't have to have a target to get the increased block rate. So it lasts for 15 seconds, increases your shield block rate by 100% for the next 2 hits. Stacks up to 5 times. So for 10 hits, you can have 100% block rate, basically. While this is up, so I think a lot of defense users actually use this and have it stacked up almost all the time. So interesting. It's a cool shield slam. I'm glad they're kind of nerfing it because it's a little bit. It doesn't cancel target skill cast, but you can keep it stacked really easy. So it's kind of a buff, but kind of a nerf depending on how you use it. Okay, so that's all the skill changes. We're gonna get into the percentage stat changes, which is what everyone's been mostly talking about. I'm gonna give my opinions on each of these. So I'm gonna zoom in on this table. So basically, before we get into it, the way to the quick version of this is they're changing a lot of the base stats and the stats that each of them give. So strength, agility, intelligence, spirit. They're changing a lot of the values for the different stats. So we'll go through each of them before and after, and give kind of. I'll leave a link to this post exactly in the description if you want to look at the numbers for yourself for a bit longer. But we're just going to go over it kind of vaguely and not really talk too specifically about the numbers themselves, but just the changes overall that are happening. So with strength, you're obviously going to get less crit rate. So right now, if you were to have 2k strength, you'd have 54, almost 55% crit rate from your strength alone. And after the patch, you'll have just under 40%. So it's about a 15% loss. And that's across the board with all base stats. You're just going to have less. So same with agility, same with intelligence. They're just essentially nerfing the flat amount of crit rate you're going to be getting from each of your stats. And it's the exact same difference on all of the base stats. So crit rate is getting nerfed from base stats, which makes sense, right? It's a little bit too easy to get 100% crit rate currently. And people are able to double dip into too many stats kind of because of it, right? So you didn't really have to take crit rate rolls on your weapons, and you could take like crit damage depen and things like that. So it kind of forces people to take a bit more crit rate if they want consistent damage, right? Which is cool. But however, they are increasing the amount of flat attack you're going to get, or healing power if you're a healer. So before, 2k strength would have given you 400 melee attack. Now it's going to give you 500. Pretty cool, right? It's just more melee attack. Instead of giving 0.2 per strength point, it would give 0.25. Pretty simple, right? So that's a buff in terms of the flat attack. That's cool. That's across the board as well. Same deal. Instead of 400 on everything, it's 500 at 2k strength. Pretty nice. The next big thing we're looking at is a nerf to the parry rate that you're going to be getting from strength. So at 42 or 41% at 2k strength, you're going to be getting 20%, which isn't too big of a deal. You know, it's not very hard to get parry rate on a melee. And although it's a good defensive stat, you really just want a little bit of parry rate so that you can get your parry reset off and you know, eliminate your cooldowns that way. So as long as you got enough parry rate to make your build work, then it's fine. It doesn't really matter if your parry rate is 50% or 30%. As long as you're parrying pretty consistently, and if you have battle focus up, you will be, so it's not too big of a deal. However, Spirit is getting parry rate removed completely, which is kind of a nerf, but also needed to be done. Healers were kind of ridiculous how much parry rate they could get. Like, a healer that had parry rate in the right places could easily get like 60% parry, and against a melee, parrying all the time is really, really good. It protects you a lot. So you'll still be able to get parry, but you're not going to be getting any from Spirit anymore, which I think is a very fair nerf, to be honest. I always thought that this change was awesome for healers, but man, as a melee, when this came out, I was fucking... It was a big difference, I'll tell you that right now. So I kind of like this. I'm sorry to all you healers out there, but this is kind of necessary, sorry. The next one is Evasion, and now this is a bit of a rip. When it comes to archers, you're going to be getting about half as much at 2k. So instead of 22%, you'll be looking at 9.9%. You know, still get a bit of agility. At least you're not like intelligence, which is going from 22% to 0. So intelligence is no longer going to give evasion, which kind of sucks as a mage that has about 50% evasion. Evasion's nice. I'm gonna miss that 22%, but it was kind of necessary. Like, mages are a bit strong at the moment. I don't think they really needed the agility. The evasion to make them even more overpowered. And this makes, you know, mages less resistant to archers, which is fair, and less broken towards melees. Because let's be honest, I play melee. I played melee on Legacy for a long time, and I know all of you who are watching this that play melee, evasion is the bane of your existence, and it's really overpowered how often and how easy it was for people to evade. So this is a good thing. This is a good thing. They're taking evasion back down to where it should be, whereas people are sitting at like 20-30%, where it's actually balanced. Right now it's not, because a mage that's geared as shit can have like 60% evasion, same with an archer, and as a melee that's really tough to deal with, and it's kind of unfair. I'm not gonna lie. And that's coming from me, a mage that has all that evasion. So yeah, it's pretty overpowered. Archers, you're still, you know, you're better off. But yeah, mages deserve, right? And then in terms of focus, so never before did focus. You never got focus from strength or agility, but we're going to be getting that now. So at 2k strength, you're going to be looking at 1,700 agility. Focus. Same with the agility. That's cool. Focus is good, right? It just kind of helps mitigate that evasion even more. So melee is going to be penetrating a little bit more of that resistance, that evasion on an archer, and archer's the same deal, right? That's nice. So this is really just a big oof to all the mages out there. So because everyone's going to have a bit more focus than they did before for free, and you're going to have way less evasion. So they're going to be penetrating a lot of that, making you a lot more vulnerable, kind of like the old school days. So I think it's a good change. It's kind of sucky because I'm going to have to, be a bit more careful with my gameplay, but it's a good change. It was a necessary change, and I'm glad they're making it. So that is cool. Now, to get to the part that everyone doesn't give a fuck about unless their name is Belamy Prime. Intelligence is giving cast time. So is Spirit, but who cares about healers, am I right? No, I'm just kidding. Cast time for healers is really fucking overpowered, and I'm glad they're getting it. It's kind of cool, especially for people who are in fucking library sets. Like, you're going to eat this shit up. This is going to be so good for you. You're going to cast shit so fast. It's insane. But yeah, that's pretty self-explanatory, right? Healers, you're losing your parry rate, boohoo. Getting some more healing power, losing a bit of crit rate, whatever, who cares? And you're getting fucking cast time, and that's really good for healer. Now, no one else gives a fuck about intelligence having cast time except for me. But this is really, really good. And I'll tell you why. Because as a cast time mage, this just means that instead of putting cast time on certain pieces and getting the cast time cap that way, essentially, instead of having 15% crit rate on my rolls, and then, instead of having 15% cast time instead of crit rate on my rolls, I just have to put 15% crit rate on my rolls instead of cast time. So essentially, they're trading crit rate for cast time. So if you're playing a non-cast time build, you don't get any positives from losing this cast time, the crit rate. But me, I'm getting cast time, which just means I can get my crit rate back in other places. So this is really good for me as a crit damage cast time mage. It's just going to be giving me, 13.7 to 15% free cast time when this patch hits, and that's super exciting. I'm glad that I'm playing a cast time mage because this is a huge buff for me. And there's mana changes, but that's whatever, right? So cast time mage getting huge buffs in the form of we saw the when we get back to 100%, we saw the the arc lightning changes up here, huge buff to cast time mage. We saw the mana fountain buffs, huge buff to cast time mage because you're going to be using a staff and it gives cast time. So that's great. Good things. A lot of people have been asking me why I'm not worried about these patches coming. Is because it's a buff to the way that I want to play mage. So that's exciting. And yeah, that's fun. Nerfing Malediction mage, buffing melees is good. Is definitely good. Buffing cast time mage is definitely good for me. Making healers a little bit squishier, but better cast time. I feel like that's a fair trade. Archers kind of benefited the most from this. You're going to be losing a bit of crit rate, but you get 100 free range damage, which is a lot for an archer. And you're not losing all your evasion, and you're getting focus. So, pretty good. Pretty good if you're an archer. I predict that after these changes come through, or when we're leading up to these changes, that a lot of people, because of the values that you get from these, a lot of people are going to start using a bit more stamina in their builds, and I'll explain why. And this is the case for every single stat we just talked about. If you compare the difference between 1,000 and 2,000 of your base stat, they've basically implemented diminishing returns on these, right? So 1,000 intelligence compared to 2,000 intelligence, you're looking at basically a 6% increase on your crit rate. You're looking at a couple hundred increased magic attack. You're looking at next to no additional cast time. And it's the same thing for everything, right? Between 1,000 and 2,000 on strength, you're looking at a little bit more crit rate, a little bit more melee attack, next to no increased parry rate, and next to no increased focus, right? So I think instead of just maxing out your amount of strength or agility or intelligence as a glass cannon, there'll be a lot more value in getting a little bit of extra stamina as an additional stat instead of just stacking pure intelligence or pure agility, because they're going to have diminishing returns, right? And obviously that amount of diminishing returns is going to get even worse over 2k, because I know as a mage, you can pretty easily get like 2.2, 2.3k intelligence if you stack it everywhere. And right now, that's really, really good because there's no diminishing returns on int. So when this patch comes, I predict a lot of people will start to run maybe like 2 parts intelligence, 1 part stamina, 2 parts agility, 1 part stamina, or even maybe closer to half and half. So yeah, that should be interesting. I think people will just have a lot more HP in general, and they're just going to have to fix their crit rate in other ways. So it'll be an interesting time for ArcheAge, and I'm pretty excited for it. I think it's a good change. Alright, so we'll read on. XL decided not to completely remove parry from strength and evasion from agility because it would affect class synergies, of course, right? Melees need to parry to get their parry resets, and evasion... If archers didn't have evasion, then why the fuck even bother? On the other hand, evasion was completely removed from intelligence to compensate for this. Intelligence and spirit gain more cast time than XL previously planned for. Yep, that's great. Cast time, loving it. As compensation for the reduction of crit rate across all stats, XL has increased the maximum critical damage cap from 300 to 350%. This is kind of insane for a crit build, especially if you're an archer that has maximum crit, or if you're a Swiftblade melee that has really high crit, or if you're a dual-wield mage that has really high crit, you can just get even more damage. And 50% additional multiplicative damage, that's going past someone's resilience, is kind of insane, and makes crit builds really fucking good when this patch hits, so that's great. This affects archers the most because the change lets archers use steady shooting without wasting the critical damage effect from it. Also affects dual-wield Swiftblade players as well. Yeah, so this is really good. The table does not show stat changes for block rate as well as some other percentage stats, but they have been applied to the same treatment. Okay, so block rate. What do you get block rate from? Do you get block rate from strength? Stamina? I can't remember exactly. I can look right here if I just tab over in game. And I've been ported to Growlgate and killed. Alright, so if I look, is it stamina that gives block rate? Yeah, it gives shield block rate. Does spirit? No, it doesn't. So yeah, same deal's been done to shield block rate, presumably. It's about the exact same amount as, yeah, so that's cool. But yeah, stamina is definitely going to be used more when this patch hits. So what do we got here? The table does not show. Basically, when stamina is less than 2,000 block rate after this patch will be higher than before. Yeah, so same deal as everything else, basically. Armor type changes. So cloth type is shit, and everyone knows that. Firstly, incorrect, and everyone that thinks that is stupid. But anyway, I digress. We'll continue. XL decided to buff cloth, awesome, as a result, and also to decide to slightly buff plate as well. Whatever, plates, yeah, I don't care. I'm a mage. Plate doesn't really worry me that much if they buff it. Yeah, decided to buff cloth. Awesome. Didn't need to be buffed. Was already good. Just because everyone plays leather mage doesn't mean they're smart. I don't know, it's good, but just saying. They increased they buff cloth, which is cool. So they removed the shackle duration or shackle reduction. And they increased the silence duration. He's translated this kind of weirdly. What it means is basically that it no longer reduces shackle by X amount, but it reduces silence by 30% instead of 20%. However, this is kind of weird because if I look at my cloth buff here, it actually decreases the duration of all debuffs by 20%. It's not shackle or it's not silence. It's all debuffs. Every debuff. That is, so like that. The way that's worded is that means everything. Trips, stuns, bleeds, everything, right? By 20%. So maybe what this will mean is they'll just change the wording of this and it'll say does not affect, it'll say decreases the duration of all debuffs by 20%, does not affect shackle, and then decreases the duration of silence by an additional 10%, or some shit. I don't know if that's how that will work, or if this is just a bad translation in-game, and this is always just meant shackle duration, in which case, yeah, cloth does kind of suck. Well, the set buff does anyway, but the way we understand it is that it's 20% of all debuffs, which is good. But anyway, it's whatever. Okay, so we got attack speed changes. Until this patch... Okay, so now this is... this caused a little bit of confusion for a lot of people, right? And I'm uncertain of how this works, but I'm going to convey my understanding of this and why I think people are wrong about how they're interpreting this, and this person's wrong about how he's translated this. So let's read. Until this patch, while casting magic skills and healing skills with scepters, staves, clubs, and great clubs, global cooldowns GCDs were not applying to the weapon's attack speed. This resulted on having a constant GCD regardless of the type of weapon you're equipped with. In this patch, XL now applies attack speeds from scepters and staves to reduce GCD. Clubs are not implemented yet and will come in the June patch. Here are some of the attack speed changes for each weapon type. So they've reduced scepter's attack speed from 1.2 to 1.0. That's fine. No attack speed change, or skill damage because the other attack speed wasn't applied before. Okay, sure. The staff attack speed, which is still 1.3, is 1.3 right now, is staying at 1.3. So the attack speed is reduced by 30%, and the skill damage is increased by 30%. Now, I'll get back to this in a second. Shield is 2 seconds to 1 second. Shield skills now use shield attack speed instead of right-hand weapons attack speed. So this is interesting. That's weird. I don't know how this will play out, but yeah, interesting. Whatever. I don't know exactly how to read into this or how that will apply. I'll think about that later. So he says here, to clarify, these changes don't affect cast time of the skills. Right, we know that cast time and GCD are separate. The decrease of the attack speed by using a staff basically increases the GCD when using magic skills. The equation for the skill's animation speed and the skill damage I was following reference. Skill animation speed equals the base skill animation speed divided by the weapon attack speed. And the skill damage equals the base skill damage multiplied by the weapon attack speed. So essentially the way he's interpreting this is, for a staff, for example, your GCDs will be 30% slower, but you'll do 30% more skill damage, right? My understanding of this is that that actually is not going to be the case, because the way weapon attack speed works is it only applies to... These guys pull me out and kill me again. Is it only applies to melee attacks. So if I'm using a Hiram staff as a melee weapon, it has to count as a melee weapon in some way, shape, or form, right? It has a type. It has a crushing weapon type, which means it does additional damage to plate. Cool. And it has a base attack speed of 1.3, meaning that with a melee attack, it's going to be 30% slower, but it's going to deal 30% more damage. But just no one uses staves as melee attack weapons because they do less DPS. So, a great sword at the same grade with the same temper would have like 200, 300 more DPS than a staff because it's not meant to be a melee weapon. The way I interpret this is that this attack speed change doesn't actually affect magic attacks. And now I could be wrong with this, so take this with a grain of salt, but I'm pretty sure, like 90% sure, that this attack speed reduction doesn't actually have any effect on magic skills whatsoever, and the skill damage does not have any effect on magic skills whatsoever either. It's just purely when you're using melee skills. And the reason I think this is because when they actually introduced this new system for the attack speed and the way they worked, none of it had an effect on magic stuff. And that could potentially be because they didn't implement it on magic stuff, and that's why they're implementing it now. But from my understanding, the reason why it wasn't implemented is because it was only for melee weapons that was changed. It didn't affect anything to do with magic stuff. So it's hard for me to kind of convey where I'm coming from with this. It's difficult for me to explain it, but whether or not we get clarity on this a little bit later in the future, or if we can get a little bit more of a detailed explanation from the what am I looking for? The translator of this document, that would be cool. But from my understanding of the game, and I'm pretty sure of this, is that this increase in attack speed and increase in skill damage is not going to apply to magic attacks, which is disappointing because it would be insanely overpowered if it did. 30% increased skill damage on staff is just ludicrous. Like, we already talked about earlier how the increased skill damage on Arc Lightning is gonna already... like, Arc Lightning, you can already one-shot people. 40% extra skill damage and then another 30% additional skill damage seems like pure fucking insanity to me. And the thing is, with GCD being increased, that doesn't really affect a cast time build. Because when you begin a cast, when you press a button, if I press Arc Lightning, the GCD and the cast time begin at the same time. So by the time you've finished casting the Arc Lightning, the GCD is up and you're ready to use the next skill. So it doesn't matter how shitty your global cooldown is, as long as it's shorter than your cast time, which is always going to be, because it's going to be like a fraction of a second, whereas your cast time for a fireball or a chain lightning, or an arc lightning, is going to be a second or something, right? So it's always going to be less. So the GCD effect really doesn't affect staff at all, unless you're doing like God's Whips or whatever. Sure, it'll affect that, but that's negated a bit from other sources. So it's hard to interpret this and know exactly how this is going to work, because this is the translation. Could have been translated poorly, could have been interpreted poorly. But like I said, from my understanding, staff is not getting a 30% increased skill damage. That would be broken as fuck. Like beyond what you can even imagine. That would be insanely overpowered, and it's just not the case. If I'm wrong when this happens and this patch comes out, then fuck me. Mage is going to be broken as shit, but I'm pretty sure this 30% skill damage is not going to apply to magic skills, and nor will the attack speed reduction on the actual base of the weapon. That only affects melee attacks. Sure, your attack speed modifier itself, the one that's on your character sheet here, affects your GCDs for your magic skills, and that affects you, but the base attack speed of your weapon does not. So, for example, here I can show you my attack speed modifier does not actually change if I change my weapon type to a Nodachi that has a 1.1 attack speed, or even if I change to, so if I change to this, it doesn't change at all. It doesn't change my attack speed, which means it doesn't affect my GCD or anything like this. You can see on attack speed here, it says, time it takes to complete an attack animation compared to the default 100%. This stat also affects the global cooldown between each of your skills, increases the stats are subject to diminishing returns. Cool, whatever. This does not change. And if I go into here and I go to, you can see that there's no stat in Magic at all for Magic attack speed, or anything to do with like melee attack speed, or there's no equivalent for magic attack speed. And if there was a modifier in the game, such as just the base amount of the base from your staff that affected the ability for you to output magic spells, there would be a stat here for it. There's not. You can see here that my melee attack speed is affected by changing the staff. So if I put a staff on, it is 1.3 base attack speed, and my Nodachi is a 1.1. Oh, sorry, is it 1.1? 1.0? 1.1. So you can see you're putting the staff on increases my attack speed by 0.2, because there's a 0.2 base attack speed increase. So it's going up by the appropriate amount. It affects your melee attack speed, does not affect your actual attack speed in any way, shape, or form, and it's not going to be affecting my skill damage anyway. So that's my understanding of that from playing this game for God knows how long, and just playing melee as well, and just knowing stuff. I could be wrong. Like I said, take this with a grain of salt. It seems like this would just be way too overpowered for it to be the opposite of what I'm saying. So, what's the thing? What's the two options are: one, I'm wrong and Staff Mage ends up being broken as fuck, equals happy Belamy Prime, or I'm right, everyone else ends up being wrong, and I'm right, so happy Belamy Prime. So anyway, that's that. That's the changes to these. I don't think this is going to affect Mage anyway. I could be wrong, like I said, but anyway, shield block being on a GCD. This is interesting, right? Basically, they're making it so that if you're getting a lot of incoming rapid damage, so a Raid Breaker, for example, standing in the middle of like 20 people getting hit by multiple physical spells at the same time, is not going to be able to block every second one of those spells. They're going to be able to block, be on a GCD for half a second maybe, block, instead of block, just blocking everything and negating a ton of damage. They're going to be on a GCD. So it's basically, your shield block is still going to be good if you're getting hit by a couple players, but it's going to be not as OP if you're in the middle of a fucking raid and tanking a ton of people's hits. So kind of makes sense. Let me read what this guy said. During the LAN Amigo XL mentioned that they were thinking about removing shield blocks while the player is in a GCD. This was aimed to nerf DPS classes that equip the shield. This change was abandoned because it was also going to hurt tanks and healers. Which a lot did not intend. As a result, XL will be looking for better implementations. Okay, so this is not going to be implemented yet, but they're thinking about ways to to change shield block in a way that makes it a bit more balanced on raid breakers. So not changing it, but cool. This was interesting. Sonic Wave Breaking in Prison. A lot of players showed concerns about Sonic Wave Breaking in Prison, which was something that they were thinking about changing. XL thought of this change because there were not enough skills to counter counter defense, and XL didn't want the tempo of fights to slow down by more and more players picking defense. However, in Prison is a key skill used by tank players, while Sonic Wave is used by many DPS players. This change was thought to just immobilize defense players because there are much more players equipped with Sonic Wave than tanks are equipped with in Prison. I completely agree with this. As annoying as in Prison is, I don't think Sonic Wave should be something that breaks in Prison. However, they should implement it on a skill that is less used to kind of encourage people to use it. I can't think off the top of my head what would be the best kind of skill to apply that to, but there should be something outside of, a mount charge or a mortar that can break in prisons, because in prisons are very overpowered and they're very fucking annoying. There should be some way to break out of them, whether it's a casted skill that does something that's difficult to use and that everyone doesn't already run. I can't really think off the top of my head what would be the best skill to put that on. I don't think you should put it on a Songcraft skill, because a lot of classes already use Songcraft and it would be very easy to pick that up. It should, in my opinion, be on a more of a niche skill tree that doesn't get picked up as often, maybe giving it more of a reason to pick it up. I'd say Oromancy doesn't really make sense because that's used too often. I don't know, it's hard to say because it kind of has to go on a support tree, right? But you can't put it on like occultism because it's already fucking broken. You can't put it on witchcraft because it's already too annoying. And raid breakers already have it. It's hard. It's tough to know where to put this, honestly. It's tough to know where to put this. But breaking in prison should be something that's in the game. Maybe put it on Swiftblade. Put it on Swiftblade melees. That would be good. Make it so that if someone uses I don't know, what's the skill in Swiftblade that kind of doesn't get used very often? Just change one of the shitty skills in Swiftblade that doesn't get used and replace it with something that breaks in prisons or breaks walls. So it would break Bone Cage, it would break in prison, stuff like that. That'd be interesting. That'd be cool. They should implement something like that. I agree with it. Now, Miss Song Banquet. I don't know anything about Miss Song Banquet. I've never done this event before, so I don't really have a whole lot of insight about this. I'm not going to read over it, but like I said, I'm going to leave the link in this in the description, so feel free to go back and read over these if you're interested in that. Language proficiency expansion. Essentially, they're just increasing the language proficiency from 10k being the cap to 20k, and having 20k will basically result in you not seeing any mistakes with the language whatsoever. So you'll be able to proficiently understand everything, because even at 10k proficiency right now, you still, every couple of words will get a symbol or two in there. So it's a nice way to kind of get that out of the game and not just be like, all right, we're going to make it so 10k is perfect now. It's, you have to put in a bit of effort to get that 20k, which is cool. Let's see. Surround the max language to 20k, which entirely removes symbols on your chat. Configured language is never reset until the user changes it. So that basically means if I'm a Harani character and I type /Nuia in chat, it will change my language to Nuian, and then I can type in that, and then people that read it and that don't understand Harani will understand the Nuian. If I log out like that and log back in, my thing will be defaulted back to Harania. I think that's what that means. So instead of that, it will be, if I log out with it on Nuian and I log back in, it'll be on Nuian. And this is presumably to kind of it's kind of like a quality of life update for exiles, right? Because you're an exile, you're a Harani character, but you're playing on the West. Your language isn't understood by like most of the fucking faction all the time, and you have to constantly type /Nuia to change your language. Just a quality of life thing for them, right? Current speaking language can be checked from the UI. There you go. So that's how you do that. That's cool. So we have here, I don't know what these are. It's presumably where you can pick up location where you can increase your language proficiency. There you go. And they've put tutor cushions in for each of the new races, I guess. So you'll be able to get dwarf tutors, presumably male and female, and you'll be able to get warborn tutors, male and female. So that's cool. You can have RP NPCs in your house now that are the new races, so that's cool. Alright, so we're getting towards the end of the video. We're already at 55 fucking minutes worth of talking here, so apologies for the long video, but if you stuck around, thank you. But anyway, weapon and armor type chain scrolls. This armor type chain scroll available in Unchained can only be used for Hiram gears below tier 5. This new scroll allows players with tier 5 Hiram or tier 3 library to change their armor type. So it's a new version of the armor type conversion scroll that we've got in ArcheAge Unchained right now. That's good. Exile also released a weapon type change scroll as well, which lets players change Hiram and library weapon types. These scrolls are RNG and are sold in the credit shop. Yeah, that's obviously not going to be how it's going to be implemented in ArcheAge Unchained, if it ever is implemented. But yeah, I have some opinions about this, but let me finish this. Left scroll is for the tier 5 Hiram and the tier 3 library armor. Middle scroll is for tier 5 Hiram and library weapon. Right scroll is for tier 3 and tier 4 Hiram and tier 1, tier 2 library weapon. Library. Who's this guy? So, the armor scrolls, that's fine, right? Being able to change your armor is something that doesn't really bother me because, you know, changing from cloth to leather is cool. I think you should be free to change that without having to reroll your whole set. However, I think the weapon reroll scrolls are a bad idea, and I really hope they don't come to Unchained or Legacy ArcheAge because it's kind of horse shit, right? Because I can change, this is a staff, presumably, changing to Greatsword, Nodachi, Great Axe, Great Club, or Long Spear. That means with the conversion scrolls, you can freely reroll class without any negatives, basically, right? So I could change if I'm a plate melee, I can change my plate to cloth and then change my fucking Great Axe to a staff. And already have it eternal or whatever the fuck the grade is. So I don't agree with the weapon stuff. I think that's kind of stupid, and I hope that doesn't make its way to Unchained. I like the armor changing scrolls. I think they're balanced, and I think they have a place in ArcheAge. The weapon ones, not so much. I'm sorry, I don't think that should be something that people can do. I think if you want to gear your character, you should have to pick. I want to be an attack speed dual wield mage. And if you want to change from that, it should be difficult for you to change from that. You shouldn't just be able to go, oh, okay, this patch, fucking staff's going to be real OP, so fuck this scepter, I'm going to go staff. That's kind of stupid, and I don't like that, because it's gimping out. I just hate it. I just don't like it. Even with these weapon type scrolls, you cannot change a one-hand weapon into a right-hand weapon. You cannot change a one- and two-hand weapon into a one-hand weapon, etc. But basically, bows can't change itself into anything unless XL Games releases new upcoming rifle. Okay, so you can't change a scepter into a staff, which is good, but it's still kind of frustrating that you can reroll so easily. And the same thing, this affects melees more than anything else. The thing is, people can ride the hype train of whatever melee type is the strongest at the moment. So you can have an axe. You can be one of the people who said early on, alright, I'm going to go with a great axe because I think it's going to be good. And then, a patch happens and your great axe turns out to be really, really, really good, and other weapons are just kind of average. But then, there's old Larry over here with a fucking Nodachi who picked that because it was good at the time. And, everyone was in leather, but now everyone's rerolled to fucking plate, and Larry's stuck with his Nodachi, and because of his choice, there should be drawbacks to having to reroll your weapon. You shouldn't just be able to get a scroll and be like, alright, I'm gonna go get a fucking Great Axe now. It should be like, alright, I have an Nodachi, is it worth it going and grinding a new Great Axe, feeding it all the way back up to Eternal, gemming and getting the right stats? Is it worth me doing that? It should be, a lot of people probably disagree with this and don't want to have to put more effort in ArcheAge, but I think the weapon change scrolls are kind of horse shit, and I don't agree with them at all. And this gets even fucking worse. We're about to read this getting even fucking worse, alright? So, lunagem type changing. Lunagems were a pain to change. Yes, because you have to make a fucking choice. Lunagems aren't a pain to change, by the way. They're not. They're really fucking easy. You just take them out, seal them, unseal them, put them back in. It'll cost a bit of gold, but it's really fucking easy to do. Unless you're using tempered gems, in which case, that was your trade-off for using tempered gems. So, too bad, so sad. I use tempered gems. I have no intention of changing them. But this is horse shit. And I'll tell you why this is horse shit. In the past, if you wanted to change your gems, you had to break all of them and put new ones in. Now it's incredibly easy compared to then, and they're trying to make it even easier again. They're trying to make it brain dead. They're trying to make it so that if I have full crit damage gems in my staff, and then one day I decide, wait a second, fucking defense pen is way stronger than this shit, I'm gonna go defense pen. I can just fucking use a couple stones and change all of that shit to defense pen, and then be a defense pen mage in a single day. I don't have to take my gems out, farm my... Like, it's kind of fucking stupid. Let me know in the comments if you disagree, but I think being able to change your lunagems is even more insane than changing your weapon type. And I think it's fucking horseshit. And I think XL Games is just trying to cash grab at the fact that they've changed all the base stats in the game and fucked up a lot of people's builds, and then they're giving them these items in the cash shop and they're going to cash in on it. For sure. And I fucking pray to God that the people at Gamigo are smart enough to not put these in ArcheAge Unchained. They can make a fuckload of money doing this on Legacy, for sure. But man, if they put this in ArcheAge Unchained in any way, I don't care if it's free in the Arc Pass, this is horse shit and it shouldn't be in the game. I think this is the worst fucking thing ever. I think if you're a mage and you want to go cast time, you should go cast time. And who knows, maybe it ends up being horse shit, but you took that gamble, and, you know, now you have a cast time mage, it kind of fucking sucks asshole, so you want to reroll and change to attack speed mage, but you have to take your gems out, you have to change some rolls, you have to seal your gems, put your gems back in, and it's going to cost you. You shouldn't just be able to get some fucking dumbass little rocks and reroll them while they're in your weapon. They're already easy to change. It's not difficult to reroll. It's just a little bit costly. It should be punishing for you to change your gear. There shouldn't be this very simple fix for completely changing your spec. I completely disagree with it. So let me know if you guys think the same. I think the weapon scroll changes and the fucking gem ones especially is kind of fucking stupid. I think it's just terrible. I think already... And it just kind of... I'm not going to rant about the gems any longer. It's whatever, right? We'll read what this guy has to say at the end. He says, XL is gracious enough to give their KR players free lunagem transmuting stones and free stat migration items because of the changes from this patch. I wouldn't say gracious enough. It's just they're exploiting the patch changes to get money, which is kind of fucked up. Like, let's be honest, that's what they're doing. It's not... They're not like, oh, they didn't say, oh man, a lot of people are going to want to change their builds. We're going to feel bad. A couple of people might quit. We should really give them something that lets it change it for real. They should be like, wait a second, everyone's going to change. What if we gave them an item that lets them change really easily, and then we put it in the cash shop? Yeah, bro, fuck yeah, give me the money, 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 money. That's what they did, right? Like, let's be honest about this. So I hope Gamigo can do us a solid and keep this shit the fuck away from the game, because it's terrible. It's not good for the game. It's not good for anything. It's just shitty, and I hate it. Free stat migration because of the changes from this patch. I doubt Gamigo would ever give this to us, but I guess we really never really know. I suspect that in the future, XL will nerf the Sky Emperor glider, so that's the achievement glider. A bunch of whiners are requesting XL to nerf it in the KR ArcheAge form. I hope they don't. I kind of hope they don't either, but I've never used the glider and I haven't run into it that much because I don't play Legacy anymore, and people were only just starting to get it on Legacy when I stopped playing, so it wasn't too prolific. So maybe it's more broken than I mean, I know it's broken, but it's the achievement glider. It's meant to be really fucking good because you get it by owning every other glider in the game. It should be rewarding, it should be good. And it is, but maybe it's a bit more broken than I would assume. So, anyway, yeah, that's the patch notes, or the translated version of the changes that are intended to be coming in Korea. We can't expect this patch to hit NA or EU, ArcheAge Unchained, for quite some time. I'd say at least this is next year, start of next year, probably further out. Depending, that's going based on previous ArcheAge timelines. However, Gamigo has been pretty good compared to the old Tryon in terms of bringing patches to us sooner, than they would in the past. They've brought us a lot closer to the current version of ArcheAge in Korea than we ever were, so that's great. But yeah, I'm very excited about some of these changes. a bit bummed out by a couple of them, and I hope some of them don't actually stick and come to ArcheAge Unchained at all, because I'd be very disappointed, as you guys could probably tell from my miniature rant just previously. But if you stuck around watching this video for the last hour, this is basically like a small podcast slash live stream rant slash going over patch notes. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, like, comment, and subscribe. Join my Discord if you want to follow up, talk about some of these changes with the folks over there or myself. That would be cool as well. But feel free to stop in to my stream and ask me about some of these patch changes if you like. I get asked about them very often though recently, so don't be too surprised if I'm reluctant to talk about it again, which is the main reason why I'm making this video. So, like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I am very gracious to anyone who stuck around through this whole video. I'm going to be uploading this completely unedited, so it's probably going to be horse shit, but it's a video that people wanted me to make, and it's a video that I wanted to sit down and make. So, thank you. I appreciate everyone who watched this, and I've been Belamy Prime. Cheers.